A lot of what we've done this year has been from some of the pressures that Cookie and I felt from the coaches. We met at the coaches convention in May with all of the coaches, and we came away from those discussions with the idea that we really need to show that we were working on education. Some of the things that are going on, which you know about, and I won't talk about too much. Obviously, the virtual clinics. This is the second one. A lot of the preparation for this particular clinic and the one 2 weeks ago was done by the NAWGJ Educational Committee. Jan, Marilyn, Denise, Cookie, and Judy, particularly. To get the scores for the number of routines, they were sent out to the judges who judged NCAA Nationals last year, and they were asked to judge the 2 events that they did last year. The committee summarized all these, and then the clinicians for tonight and 2 weeks ago reviewed them and presented with shorthand. Thank you to everybody who contributed, whether they were a judge from Nationals or they were the education committee. Okay, one of the other initiatives, as you know, Cookie's been talking about it, was the Landings and Balance Beam project. This was a coach and judge combined project. That will be coming up online. And as Cookie said, it won't be to be scored, it'll be to show you the standards. As in the past, there will be a new practice judging film up. It will have start values and scores. And if you want to go look at shorthand, some of the routines that are in the practice judging film are in the training that we've just seen. So you'll be able to look at shorthand deductions if you want to for those. The written exam is up, as you should know. You need to do it by December 15th. We've had some judges who've emailed me because they're confused by the word practice. That is the written exam. I think the practice idea is that you're practicing for the season. There are 386 active judges in the system. 162 have taken the exam. You have a couple more weeks. So please take the time to do that. And you can go back later if you want to, if you're going to be judging balance beam, for example, and go over your questions. It's meant to be an educational tool and a learning opportunity. This is one of the initiatives we've been working on. Actually, the NAWGJ JAS committee felt that we needed some guidance on when to give yellow cards. So there's an example document, but there's also a video about it. So this is another place where you've got link information. There's also something up on the website that you should look at because it's been updated. And along with the compensation document, you should be aware that there are notes about COVID observations for collegiate judges, and it's been updated. So go on to nawgj.org and look at that document to make sure you're updated. Now, there are new things in the works. These are coming new initiatives, not quite ready yet. One of the things that we talked about was the need for helping judges with making notations while they're judging so that the summary forms can be more useful to the coaches. It is the only way that they get feedback from us. So they've indicated how important it is for us to be very specific. So in order to be specific, you've got to train yourself to make better notes when you're actually writing things down. Cookie's put together a form and submitted it to a number of judges to get their input on what they use for notations to indicate what the problems are with the elements. One suggestion is if you're not the chief judge, as soon as the routine is over, make some extra notes because you have a little bit of time there before the next gymnast goes. So this is a new project that should be up relatively soon. We don't have an answer on the clarification of fall timing. It has gone to the NCAA committee as to what happens in terms of an injury or possible injury. So just pay attention to answers for that. Cookie, can you come back on and explain a little bit about what's happening with the evaluations?
Yes. So I mentioned this summer at the USAG Congress that we were going to, for the first time, be able to let judges see the evaluations. There are some parts of the evaluations that coaches turn in on them. We've always felt that that would be fair, so that if they're making comments about judges, judges should get to see them. And don't forget that 96% of the evaluations were extremely positive. So these are, for the most part, good news for us. On the other hand, when there's something that needs to be done it can be fixed, it's important that you know that so that you can address it. So we found a way to automate that. We've been working with Jason Fredericks, who does Road to Nationals, and he does our JAS system as well. They will be in the JAS system. They'll be password protected. You'll be the only ones who will be able to see it. Nobody else will be able to see it. Assigners won't be able to see it. Coaches won't be able to see it. You had to have had at least 4 meets, distinct meets, I believe, Lois, wasn't that correct? Right. Yeah, you had yes. 4 meets before you'll get an evaluation. The highest rating you could have on a particular item is all or mostly positive. That will mean of all the people who submitted an evaluation, you had all or mostly positive. There's nothing higher than that. So don't think that, well, why didn't I get all positives? There is no all positives. It's all or mostly positive. Then there's a second category. I think it's needs some attention, something like that. If they wrote comments, you'll have comments, but not very many of them write comments. So if you don't have comments, don't think that that means that they didn't think you did a good job or whatever. It's just simply they're busy and they don't have time to write the comments, but there'll be some comments there. I think we're trying to protect the anonymity of the coaches, and that's the reason that you won't have an evaluation unless you have kind of a threshold for what we thought could be considered to be anonymous. And then the other thing is, if it was a very specific concern that they had, we're either not going to provide it or we're providing it in a way so that it's cannot identifiable. The coaches are very, very concerned that giving you this information will prompt retaliation. I think that that's not a fair assessment of how our judges think or act or behave. And that, in fact, what we want to do is we want to get better. And if we need a little bit of feedback that will help us get better, that's this purpose. And that's it.
There's a large initiative this year that came from the coaches about meet referee procedures. It's supposed to be a pilot, but it seems like it's being used quite a bit. Now, if you're not going to be a meet referee, you may not feel like you need to go look at these, but when they start happening, you may want to know what is going to be changed. This came from the Coaches Association. They basically told us that they wanted the meet referees to have more input and to be more responsible for the way the meet was handled. There are 5 YouTube videos. Donna and Evelyn were the actresses in them, but Cookie has updated them for the new rules. So if you haven't looked at those recently, that's painless. Just go in and see what is changed. One of the things that changed was in assigning, we were asked to assign the meet referees first, which didn't seem to have too much of a problem impact for the assigners. But what did have an impact is that the meet referee assignment counted in the home and away, which it has not done before. We suggested 1 per school. In other words, you were only meet ref at 1 school. So you got to judge, you got to be on the floor if you got to see that school again. And that during the season, not counting conference meets, you would do no more than 3 meet ref responsibility. Now, there are notes that have to do with things that are not in the modifications about meet referees. And so I'm going over these to highlight them for the people who didn't get trained as a meet referee. The biggest difference is the role, at least to me, is the role of the meet referee in conferences. In the past, I might have been given an inquiry. I would go over and hand it to the panel, and I would say, figure out what you did and why, and then tell me about it so I can tell the coach. Now they are asking us to help with the inquiry process. We also have the chance, which is the second blue one, we can review the video of the routine being inquired on if you didn't see it performed. This is a one-time review, no slow Mo, nothing special. Then you conduct the inquiry meeting with the panel if time, and the if time permits means if you're not going somewhere else for another inquiry. And it's supposed to be conducted in a collegial, non-officious manner. So it's the same sort of thing that usually happens in any inquiry conference, except the meet referee can counsel the panel or give a personal opinion. She or he can't ask to change a score. And then the last one is the idea that we need to regulate a little bit the 2-minute transition. Again, it's if time allows and you're not handling other inquiries. Okay, the post-meet, one of the things that for educational reasons we're trying to include is there anything that the judges saw on an event that should be conveyed to the coaches? For example, if the judges saw no side choreography on the beam, the meet referee can now say that to the coach, but say it in a way like, well, you might want to check this. We have to be careful that the coach didn't make the decision to leave something out. So we're not questioning their knowledge. We're just saying you might want to check it. The other one that has come up in the past is you might want to check your B elements and make sure you have enough. So that's post-meet. All of the rest of the things that are in the meet referee information have not changed. These are the additions. When I was writing the written test, going over it, I check each of the questions, each of the foils, and make sure I can find the rule in either the code or in the modifications. Well, to my surprise, I could not find the statement that was in the rules last year about the fact that we had to stay until the coaches all signed the document. So this prompted looking at the page in the current modifications, but my comments are unofficial. Now, when Crystal receives questions, they have to then be reviewed by the NCAA. And she and I talked about these, and these are things you need to know, but are not critical in terms of the actual judging. So what I did is took the document, and I will just highlight the ones that you should make note of that go into this page. It's page 19, I think, of the meet referee checklist. So the big one that we all worried about a month or two ago was the statement about the equipment, which made it sound like we had to go early to the meet and measure equipment. Now that's true at regionals and nationals for NCAA, and they wanted to keep that in there for NCAA, but they didn't realize when they rewrote this that they were implying that it would apply to all the season meets. This one, Crystal's already put out. So the intent of the pre-meet checklist items for equipment are that you would be responsible to talk to the meet director if there's an equipment issue, but you do not need to go and measure the equipment as you would at NCAA regionals or nationals. This is just one word addition, so it's exactly the same text. I added back in things that were in it a year ago. Okay, these are the two that could be confusing. What it says is conduct pre-meet based scoring with all panels. I don't know why that says by another committee. That makes no sense at all. What this was really intended was what we've talked about before, is that Judy and Cookie have prepared short clips of routines from gymnasts who are no longer competing that you can use at your judges meeting to review college judging. The main reason for this is just to remind you that other things that are specific to college. There's a video that talks about this, and that's the link to it. So the idea is that you would do 1 or 2, preferably 2, routines on your event in your panel, not by the meet referee, which means if you're a chief judge, you need to think about either downloading the routines onto your phone or talking to your other panel judge the night before or 2 nights before and reviewing what's going to happen. When I give you some statistics later on, you're going to see that the average number of meets for our college judges is 6. That means you're not judging college every weekend so that you get into the routine of college. You may judge a few in February, a couple in January, a couple in March, but you're not doing this as intensely as you are USAG meets. So our goal is to try to make sure that you keep all the college rules fresh in your mind. And the last two, as I said, they left out the one about the fact that you have to wait until the coaches sign the score sheet. And the other one that we've been asked about is that, what do you do with the meet referee checklist? And the best bet is to give it to the meet director, and you should sign the bottom of it, even though there's no place for a signature. You need to go into your modifications and look at those and make sure you understand what's different on that page. Any Coaches Association member can submit a routine from any competition to be reviewed for accuracy and credibility. And these are the steps. The first one is mainly dates in terms of when they have to do this. This talks about the kinds of things they can ask about. And they're going to look at, if they wish to, 6 routines. They have to be submitted by Monday. And the executive director will create a report to distribute to the Coaches Association after they review them. The composition of this review board is to be composed of former NCAA gymnasts and retired coaches who are also certified judges. If you fit those 2 categories, you would need to apply to be accepted for the review board. And there will be 2 groups that will alternate weeks, so every review board member won't be doing it every week. The members will remain anonymous to the membership so that they can do routines without bias or pressure. And they clarified that if you've only been a meet referee, you could apply. But if you've been on the floor scheduled to be seated, you can't. The process will not change the outcome of any competition. It's hoped to be educational. So at the end of February, they're going to discuss this pilot program and decide if it worked or if it didn't work. This is just a wrap-up of where we are right now. Again, huge thank yous to Cookie for everything she's done, to the Education Committee, to my regional assigners who, because of COVID and still getting changes, have worked hard last year and are still working hard. So thank you to all of them. Right now, we have 386 active judges, and I define active as the judge gave us some dates. If they didn't put any dates in the system, they're not active. 8 of those had no meet assignments due to perhaps affiliation, perhaps they didn't give us weekends, they gave us just weekdays, and maybe they're in a part of the country where they weren't needed. 378 had 1 meet or more, 20 only had 1 meet. There were 2,086 assignments, and that is still changing. When I took the count of all of the assignments, the average number of meets per judge is 5.5. And 189 of the 386 had more than 6. But remember, this includes in some parts of the country, Division II, Division III meets, and conference meets. It does not include the NCAA or the USAG meets. They are not in our JAS statistics.
Yes, I do. There's a couple of questions, and also I just wanted to make a couple of comments. So we've heard some ideas where the coaches are trying to get more information for us, and the reason for that is they've had some bad experiences, truthfully. They've had some really good experiences, and as we said, of the evaluations we had, 96% were positive. But when those bad experiences have an impact on an athlete or a team being able to advance or to be able to get recognition, that's very demoralizing for the coaches. And it's not only demoralizing for them, it is demoralizing for the athlete as well. So their motives are good. I think, it makes it sound as if there's some animosity towards us. And I don't think that's their motivation. Their motivation is simply they want to make sure that our athletes are getting scored the same way every meet. They don't want bias in those scoring. They are very sensitive to that. It's probably one of the more common comments in the evaluations that we see. But they also want to make sure we don't make mistakes. And how do they find out we make mistakes? Some of it's through the summary forms. So when we fill out the summary forms and we don't have good information, either because we didn't have time to write it down, or we wrote it down incorrectly, or we had to take a guess because we didn't remember, whatever, but you have to put something down. Then they go back and they look at the video and it's just not there. They don't see it. And so then they feel as if that they did not have a good shot at having a fair meet. So that's one of the reasons that we're putting so much emphasis on practice judging before your meet. Please do that. We just have to review them. They're unusual rules and we don't use them a lot. And so we really do have to study. The other thing we have to do is do more practice judging. Lois will be putting up those videos like we usually do every year. But in addition, we've already got routines that we want judges to judge at every meeting. So when you have your meeting, we'd like each panel to take one of these videos that's online and practice judge, not so much for the score. In fact, there's no scores that are given. We want you to practice judge to review the differences in the rules for the college. So you will pick one or two routines that you can practice judge on site, and they're called on-site videos. Pick one or two that you and your partner who you'll be judging with that day will sit and talk about all the rules. Does she have the side choreography? Does she have all of her special requirements? Go through all the composition deductions. And why is that so important? At the beginning of the year, whenever your beginning of the year is, and remember it's different for everybody, that's when we seem to make the most mistakes. And we know it ourselves, and we've reported it ourselves, and then we also see it in the evaluations. So we need to keep those mistakes to a minimum at the beginning, and the best way to do that is study before you go to the meet, get the unique rules in, practice judge the videos that have scores and UTL deductions posted, and then also when you get on site, get together with your partner and go through a couple of routines. You may not need it. You may feel you're pretty good, you're experienced, you've been doing college a long time, you know the rules. Your partner may need that help, may need that refresher, because it's your panel as a whole that is going to be evaluated negatively when the mistakes are made. It's not just one or the others. We're also putting them on a Google Drive, and there's a set of instructions that we'll post. They aren't posted yet. That if you prefer to download one or two routines to your own device, that might be a good idea, because sometimes when we're down in the arenas underneath the ground, we don't get good Wi-Fi access. But if you have it on your own device, then you'll be able to pull it up and play it. So this practice judging is something that coaches really like. They know that our rules are complicated. They know that we judge everything from Excel to level 10 and elite and thing, and they understand. But that doesn't matter. They expect us to come to the meet prepared, and we expect ourselves to come to the meet prepared. If we've added 15 minutes to the report time, you need to be there 45 minutes, not the report time, but to the meeting time. So instead of a 30-minute meeting, it's a 45-minute meeting. And in part, that's to have time to do these on-site reviews.
We need to thank Jenna. We would not be able to do this without her expertise and her training of all of us. She did one for new judges last year. She did the training for experienced judges. This is her third round, and we keep asking her because she's so good at it. But a huge, huge thank you for making this all work, because it is not easy.